Hello, I'm Shreya Sen-Handley, the author of two books with HarperCollins, the short story collection Strange, which has been recently published, and the award-winning Memoirs of My Body. I'm also a librettist with the Welsh National Opera, and our opera Migrations will go on tour in the UK next year. I'm a columnist for the international media, writing for the National Geographic, CNN, The Guardian, and more. I'm an illustrator for international publishing, and I'm a creative writing teacher. Currently, I'm writing my third book, which is a raft of travel tales told from lockdown by a mother to her children. And I'm writing my monthly column. I'm homeschooling the kids and so much more, just like you. And oh, I so know how it feels. So I thought I'd tell you a story, a short story from my short story collection, Strange. And it's because stories, I think, help us travel at a time when we can't anymore. And they also allow us to connect with the lives of others. Again, we aren't able to do as much of that as we would like at the moment. So Strange is a book about the unexpected in all our lives. And in this story, Room for Two, a mother and a daughter fly to Corfu for a holiday, but also to make room for changes. Room for Two. That summer, I thought it would be a good idea to get away from it all. The Christmas before, Maya had given us a terrible scare by falling so dreadfully ill that we had to rush her to hospital. She was there much longer than expected and required constant care. So I gave up my job to be with her till I was finally allowed to bring her home. The months of anxiety had affected Rohan badly, and he moved out soon after. What I could not understand or explain to his daughter was why he never came back to see her, though I heard from a common acquaintance that he was living with someone nearby. All in all, it was a very difficult period in our lives, and in the summer I decided that a holiday was in order. We packed two small suitcases with just the essentials: clothing, toiletries, and a few of Maya's favorite toys and books, and that afternoon flew to sun-drenched Corfu, leaving a grey and gloomy England behind us. Maya was excited. She had been subdued since her illness and her father's inexplicable desertion. But once in the air, her wan face lit up and she spent the whole flight pointing to the Lilliputian landscapes and funny-shaped clouds she saw from the window. The middle-aged man next to me looked irritated, but Maya was enjoying herself after such a long time that I wasn't about to stop her. I had gone all out to make this a holiday to remember, renting a villa in a lovely lemon grove despite our constrained circumstances. I couldn't stretch to a pool, but I hoped she would make friends with kids from neighboring villas quickly and join them at theirs, leaving me time to write. I had just begun freelancing after months off work and would have to be a working holiday. We drove past white sand beaches and up winding wooded roads in our rented car till we reached our villa atop a hill. Maya chatted all the way there as if a stopper had been removed, and all the thoughts she'd bottled up inside for so long were pouring out. "Oh, Mummy, look, a freckle," or freckle as she called it. "The sun's given me my first freckle after ages." I looked at the tip of her nose to which she was pointing proudly, but could see nothing. Not wanting to disappoint, however, I laughed and happily agreed. The sun was scorching and the sea shimmered in the heat, but as we drove into the ancient orchards that cocooned our group of villas, the trees shut out the blaze, bathing everything in a green light. It was not what I had expected, but it looked restful, and I could see it being just the thing for us after the trials and tribulations of the past months. At the end of the road there was a sign directing us up a narrow, overgrown track. The path we jolted over seemed never-ending, but to our delight we caught glimpses of movement in the undergrowth. which could only have been local fauna. Maya was excited, straining in her seat, eager to get acquainted with a new, but temporary, I made a mental note to rein her enthusiasm in a tad, home. Did you see him, Mummy? No, I said, slightly flustered, trying to concentrate on this bendy road, Maya. And then with a smile, you be my eyes, honey. You always see things I can't. Her obvious pleasure in everything justified my decision to spend the summer away from my parents' claustrophobic concern and her father's indifference. My parents were constantly after me to let go and move on. I never understood why, because I neither wanted nor expected Rohan to come back to us. I knew that when we returned, glowing with health and full of our adventures, they would have to accept that we were happy. On our own. The villa looked very old. Older than in the photograph I'd seen, but it had charm. As I heaved open the heavy front door, I could hear the scurry of little feet. Not rats, I hoped. The sitting room was cool and dark, with even the light streaming in through the patio doors, an undersea green. Its old-fashioned furniture looked comfortable if dusty. A tiled corridor led off it, first to a large kitchen with an imposing old stove, and fortunately, tucked away in a corner, a more modern cooker, belying the villa's forgotten for centuries air. Depositing our luggage in the first bedroom we came to, we went to have a look around the rest. The next one along was smaller and darker, obviously the second bedroom of the brochure. We wouldn't need to, anyway, as Maya had slept in my room since her ordeal. Then at the end of the gloomy corridor we found an extra door. A room we didn't know we had. The door to this last room appeared stuck at first, and took our combined weight, mostly mine, Maya was a wisp of a thing, to open. It was another small dark space with twin beds, but it felt more welcoming somehow. And though farthest from the sitting area where I planned to work, it seemed the most suitable playroom for Maya. She took to it immediately. "This will be our room, Mummy," she trilled, slipping in and out of its shadows impishly, while I scrambled up to the window, set higher than in any other room, to look outside. The underbrush was overgrown on this side of the property, but not unpleasantly, rippling with the life I'd noticed driving up to the villa. "Not mine, my love," I beamed, "just yours, a room of your own again." "That's what I said, Mummy. Not yours, ours." Lost for a moment, as I often was these days, in how pale she'd become after her hospital sojourn, I never got round to correcting her rather cute royal we. We settled into a routine over the next few days. After breakfast on the patio every morning, we would walk to the beach, which was a brisk trot down the hill for a dip in the sea. On returning to the villa, I would start work, and Maya would gambol in the garden or the playroom by herself for a few hours. I had hoped she would make friends with the other holidaying children, whose voices carried from nearby villas like a constant murmur in the leaves, often seeming much closer than they could be, but the opportunity hadn't arisen yet. That didn't worry me. Maya was very good at keeping herself entertained with her vibrant imagination. We regrouped for lunch, spending the rest of the day together as I had promised her, going back to my writing to put the finishing touches to the day's effort only after dinner, whilst Maya spent the last half hour before bedtime in her little haven. Days slid by at this gentle pace, and after her initial resistance to getting to know the neighboring kids, Maya made friends with them. I could hear them rampaging with her through our garden, though they never came into the house. What conversation I could catch struck me as entirely one-sided, with Maya doing all the talking. But that's who she was, I chuckled to myself as I shifted my attention back to my work. When we bumped into them at the local market, Maya pretended not to know them, and vice versa. Yet isn't that how kids are at that age? keen to keep parents and pals apart? I was just pleased she'd made any friends at all. She had been lonely in Nottingham, where her companions had curiously melted away and she hadn't shown any interest in getting back with them. So now I left her to her games with her new cohorts in the dense, comfortingly dark garden and got on with the scribbling. She appeared to grow particularly attached to a child called Sunny. The first time I realized she was playing with the kids next door was when I heard her calling his name, followed by a glimpse of a small shape rustling in the leaves farther down the main path. She must have been playing hide and seek with real friends for a change. I was so relieved I almost cried. Later that week she dropped the name in conversation at lunchtime. "Bring your buddy back to the house with you sometime," I urged. Maya smiled and said she did. I know she meant she would, and made a note to myself in my head again to work with her on her grammar after the holiday. She was happy, and that was the important thing. Capering all day with her new companions and keen to get away after dinner to the little bedroom down the hall to lose herself in what sounded like very boisterous games of imagination. That she seemed to want less and less of my company didn't bother me because I wanted that for her too, her own circle of friends back in Nottingham, allowing me to take up a full-time job and maybe pick up the thread of my former life, see old confederates, meet someone new. I never really knew at what point the sound of the kids' games receded from our garden into the wilderness beyond. Maya still mentioned Sunny occasionally, though only ever in passing. But she had always been secretive, more than ever these past months, and I didn't mind her tendency to slink into her internal world as long as I could keep an eye on her. That I could no longer see or hear her playing from the sitting-room window troubled me, although even when they sounded far away, as though exploring the untended orchards, if I called for Maya, she would emerge from the gloom of the long corridor as if she'd been in the little room all along. "I heard you, Mummy. Where were you?" I would ask, simultaneously anxious, annoyed, and a wee bit pleased with her precocious independence as one is with spirited children. She would shake her head and counter, "But I can hear you, Mummy, always," as if that was all that mattered. She wasn't wrong, but I decided to pay more attention to her comings and goings. Over the next few days, whenever the voices stopped murmuring in the garden, I would walk down the corridor to see if Maya had taken refuge in her room. I was worried she was not getting along with her new friends as well as she had initially. She was, after all, very individual. There was something about the room, too, that had begun to disturb me. It had an atmosphere. Not eerie, quite the opposite. It felt peopled and comfortable, though it was quite bare but for the two small beds and a large empty cupboard. It would draw me in and make me want to stay. One day I went in looking for Maya and stayed for hours, daydreaming about the life we would have once I was earning more and Maya had returned to the school she adored. I hadn't readmitted her after her illness because she was still so fragile. The next morning I was back in the room, feeling like I was visiting a confidant for a chat. Everything about it, from the pleasingly faded colors of the patchwork bedspread on which I plumped myself down, to the sunlight trickling almost hesitantly through the high window, had a lulling effect on me. I felt more at peace than I had for a while. I even caught myself humming the songs I used to sing to Maya many moons ago. It felt like a homecoming, an overwhelmingly emotional homecoming that threatened to tear down the defenses I had built up in the preceding months of grappling with my misfortunes. When the tears began to flow at long last, I luxuriated in them. But only briefly. My little girl had no one else to hold it together for her. I would have to be strong. I left the room that day, resolved not to intrude into Maya's space again. Yet there I was the very next day. Soon I was taking turns with Maya in using her room, seeking its comfort the minute she was out playing with her friends in the mornings. It would wrap itself reassuringly round me like a mother's womb, and I craved my time in it. But I knew the hold it had on me was odd, to say the least. At the end of that week, the cleaning lady who had come by a couple of times before arrived with a companion who stood guard as she worked, both darting apprehensive glances at us all the while. I got the distinct impression that they were on edge about something they wanted to discuss with me, but didn't know how to start. One of the women finally plucked up the courage to approach me. "Going home soon? I can't clean this house any more." I knew immediately that my growing disquiet about the villa was not misplaced. "Please tell me why," I implored the woman, turning to coax Maya out of earshot, as she was very impressionable. Only to see the pair herring off down the path as if they'd seen a ghost. I looked around uneasily, more perturbed than ever. All that day and into the next I cajoled and even scolded Maya into accepting that we needed to return to Nottingham without delay, although another 2 weeks of holiday remained. I could not put my finger on what it was that was upsetting me. It was the unsettling miasma that clung to the villa in its green gloaming. It was the air about it, thin air, nothing really, but I didn't want to stay any longer. "You were unwell for so long that I can't take a chance. We must go back," I stated as firmly as I could in the face of her relentless young logic. "But I'm better here, mummy, and I have friends, a friend." "I know," I agreed, my heart breaking for her. "But there's also something here that isn't right." How weak and unconvincing, I thought, even as I said it. "We have to leave. Nothing can happen to you, not again." Then softly to myself, "I do not ever mean to lose you." Perhaps she heard me, because she finally gave in, trotting off to her tiny room to collect her toys. I heard 2 sets of footsteps coming back, and turned around quickly. "Can Sunny come with us?" Maya asked, looking at her companion. I nodded. There was nobody there, of course, but I could live with that. I already did. I hope you enjoyed the story and twigged what happened at the end. I will leave you with my first ever non-operatic poem, No Man is a Stainton Island. I write librettos, or epic poems, for the Welsh National Opera, but this poem was the first poem I'd ever written, not meant to be belted out on stage. I was asked by a Nottingham-based charity, Communities Incorporated, that works with the police and other public services to tackle hate crimes. And they asked me to write a poem for their national campaign against hate crimes earlier this year that spoke of the bystander experience in these difficult situations. No Man is a Sneinton Island, with thanks to John Donne for inspiration and a couple of lines. No man is an island. Sitting in the tram, watching Nottingham go by, my eyes are drawn to a group of lads. 3 men, beer in hand, burqa in their crossfire. Allah Babkar, Ababkar, Allahu Akbar. One veiled woman, an island, stands up to the veiled threats, stands up for her lot, holding the other at bay. The other is not West, she is not East. It is humanity versus hate.
With growing alarm I watch and hover, held back by indecision, casting around for the courage to confront. Where is the button that switches on pluck? Scramble, grip, press, squeeze, panic sets in. As they watch, they glower, and it glows, the button. Amber, ambered, I fly, yellow-bellied, off the tram. I pressed, squeezed, wrong button. With it, my good intentions undone. I am involved in mankind, flowing with mankind, down forest fields to the tram stop. This time, when it happens, my wits are about me. A clutch of lads, beer in hand, ball gown in their crossfire. Scoffing, effing, blinding, as they close in, the last I fear, for the boy in the ball gown, standing up straight, unafraid, an island. I scramble, grip, press, squeeze the buttons. I call the police. I call out to the tram stop crowd. They run to the ballroom boy, swaying now not to music but exhaustion, held up by a kind stranger, an island no longer. As the bad lads run, green to the gills, the light goes green, the tram rolls up, green and white, with white, brown, black inside, rainbow people too. I scramble, press, squeeze into that crowd, because I am involved in mankind. No island will I be evermore.